The Galactic Empire had crushed 932 civilizations before lunch. Their ships were flawless, their weapons divine, their language outlawed the word defeat. So when their armada emerged in the Helix Rift and demanded surrender from the approaching Terran fleet, they expected groveling. What they got instead was laughter. Loud, unfiltered, spine-chilling human laughter beamed across the stars like a war drum of mad gods. "Permission to laugh, sir?" asked Lieutenant Crow. Captain Dax Morrigan just grinned and poured himself a drink. "Granted. Let's teach these prissy bastards the difference between royalty and reality." They appeared like gods, sleek, silver, unblemished by time or fear. The Imperial ships broke through the rift like a spear of divine judgment, flanked by dagger-shaped destroyers that shimmered with plasma shielding. At their center, the voice of the Galactic Empire echoed through every open Terran frequency, deep and dripping with condescension. "Terran vessels, you have violated the sovereign zone of His Radiance, Varnak 14. Power down your systems. Submit your command chain. Kneel, and your extinction shall be delayed." Captain Dax Morrigan exhaled through his teeth and poured a glass of what looked like whiskey but probably wasn't. His knuckles were tattooed with ancient Earth runes and his left eye flickered with a pulse monitor HUD. Across the bridge of the Rays of Glory, his crew waited for the word. No one moved. No one even blinked. "Lieutenant Crow," Dax said, voice low. "Permission to laugh?" Crow cracked a grin. "I thought you'd never ask." Moments later, a signal bounced back to the Empire's fleet, open channel. Across the silence of space, transmitted to every one of the Empire's pristine ships, came a sound they hadn't heard in centuries: human laughter. Deep, wheezing, unfiltered, almost savage. Not from fear. Not from madness. But from sheer disbelief. The laughter of a species that had crawled through hell, evolved in chaos, and found mockery more potent than missiles. On the enemy flagship, the transmission was analyzed, categorized, and labeled as a Class 6 psychological contaminant. The Imperial tacticians had studied hundreds of alien species. None had ever laughed at a threat. Most wept. Some begged. Others prayed. But this was blasphemy. Confusion rippled through their perfect ranks. Dax flicked a switch. "Load program Harlequin." Crow hesitated. "We sure? That's not been field tested." Dax chuckled. "Neither was gravity once." The Rays of Glory shifted. Its hull pulsed with a visible distortion field as several side modules unfolded and began emitting rhythmic pulses, light, sound, harmonic frequencies encoded with neural disruptors and emotional triggers. Harlequin wasn't a weapon. It was a psychological wedge. Designed not to kill, but to make the enemy question the very logic of war. The Empire fired the first volley. Twin beams of red plasma streaked toward the Terran ship with surgical precision, and curved off course at the last second, twisting midspace like confused snakes and disintegrating harmlessly in a rainbow mist. Dax raised his glass. "To science fiction. Always a step behind us." The Rays of Glory replied with graviton bursts shaped like musical chords, calculated to collide with enemy shields and sync with their internal command frequencies. It didn't destroy them, it disrupted them. Panels flickered. Orders looped. Crew began hallucinating. One Imperial officer fell to his knees, screaming that the stars were laughing at him. A second volley came. Missiles this time. Thousands. They swarmed like a storm of mechanical locusts. "Crow," Dax said, spinning his chair lazily. "Care to cue the punchline? Detonating drone decoys. Syncing to meme flash scatter patterns." Suddenly, space was flooded with imagery. Projections of grinning Terran faces, distorted cartoons, ancient viral symbols, cats in sunglasses, apes in suits, a banana with a monocle. The Empire's targeting AI recoiled. The missiles recalibrated. Recalibrated again. Then turned on each other in a frantic attempt to resolve priority conflict. The explosion was a ballet of absurdity, flames, debris, and a sound wave of distorted laughter echoing across the rift. "That's your version of diplomacy?" asked Ensign Varda, barely old enough to remember pre-expansion Earth. No, Dax replied. That was the opening joke. The real show's about to start. He tapped into the command line. Across the Terran fleet, warships emerged from behind asteroid fields and sensor blinds, each more unconventional than the last. One was shaped like a dragon, wings lined with EMP claws. Another looked like a floating cathedral with a cannon for a spine. They weren't military standard, they were engineered for psychological warfare, every inch designed to make the enemy feel wrong. The Empire responded as expected, poorly. Fleet formations shifted into aggressive mode, but something was off. Their ships moved slower. Communications lagged. The very structure of their hierarchy, rigid top-down, perfectionist, was imploding under the pressure of dealing with something not serious. Update from the Imperials, said Crow. They're invoking Code Indigo. Panic code? Dax smirked. So soon? They've never faced a culture that mocks them mid-battle. Culture? Kid, this isn't culture. This is humanity with the safety off. The rays of glory darted forward, weaving through the weakened formation of the Imperial vanguard. Dax gave the order to fire a volley, not of weapons, but of quantum-sliced poetry packets. Compressed metaphors, irrational math riddles, emotional trigger sonnets. Ships began turning on each other. Some captains screamed. One ship powered down entirely as its AI refused to continue operations under emotional distress. Inside the command throne of the Empire's flagship, High Executor Talmar's hands trembled. What are they doing? Are they insane? No, said his adjutant. Worse. They're human. Back on the rays, Crow approached Dax with the datapad. We just intercepted internal Empire transmissions. They think we're a virus. Dax laughed. We are. One they didn't vaccinate for. He stood and addressed the crew. They thought we'd kneel. Thought we'd obey. They brought polished blades to a chaos fight. And now, they're breaking. Not because of our tech. Not even our firepower. But because we dared to laugh in the face of their empire. Ensign Varda stared at the screen, where 3 enemy vessels had collided in blind panic, their AI screaming for reboots. Captain, she said slowly, what if they escalate? Dax turned to her, a glint in his one good eye. Then we escalate harder. And funnier. He raised his glass again. Because the one truth they forgot is this: humanity survives not because we're smarter, faster, or stronger. But because when gods show up with fire and thunder, we bring a damn joke book, and we read it aloud while everything burns. The rays of glory soared through the field of wreckage, a shadow of madness and brilliance, heading straight into the unknown, and laughing all the way. The aftermath of the first clash echoed across the stars like a warning shot from a mad god. The Empire hadn't seen a real battle in generations, and now their flagship, a ship 3 kilometers long, built from crystallized neutron glass, was drifting through space with its command AI reduced to gibberish and static. Entire command chains collapsed in hours, not from casualties, but from disbelief. They had not prepared for a war against a species that thrived on unpredictability. Back aboard Rays of Glory, Captain Dax Morrigan leaned over the tactical display. A cluster of enemy ships had begun repositioning, trying to regroup and reinforce the sector known as the Triad Belt. He noted the exact timing of their maneuvers. Predictable. Beautifully rigid. As if they expected the next Terran move to follow conventional logic. They still think we're bluffing, said Lieutenant Crow, voice laced with amusement. Even after we turn the dreadnought into a disco ball. Dax scratched at the scar on his chin and replied, That's the tragedy of empires, Crow. When you're too proud to adapt, your only move is to double down. Orders came in from Terran High Command. The Empire had activated the Starbound Fleet. An elite death squad known for purging entire systems with precision strikes and scorched orbit doctrine. They were on their way now, armed with legacy weapons and a mandate signed in blood. Crow looked up. They're throwing the big ones at us. Good, Dax muttered. Means we've scared them. He sent a burst transmission to the rest of the Terran fleet, encrypted with sarcasm packets and distortion fields. The message was clear: Operation Jackknife was a go. Within 12 hours, every Terran ship scattered into deep vectors, disappearing from known star charts. The Empire, hungry for revenge, chased them. That's what Dax wanted. Spread them thin. Make them chase ghosts. Exhaust the structure. Dax himself took rays of glory into the Black Curtain, a region the Empire had never mapped because it defied stellar logic. Gravity behaved oddly here. So did light. It was where failed science lived and thrived. Perfect for the next move. Ensign Varda approached, wide-eyed. The Empire's simulations show they'll corner us in 4 standard hours. Dax didn't even glance up. They can't corner something that doesn't stay still. Prep the hull for polarity flips. We're going to break some laws of motion. As the starboard fleet descended, they expected clean kills. They found instead entire Terran warships bursting from nowhere like laughing ghosts, warping in on anti-coordinates, firing weapons that reverse thermal decay, slicing ships open with silence waves. The Empire had logic. The humans had lunacy forged into doctrine. High War Master Zurovier stood aboard the Glory of Obedience, the flagship of the starboard fleet, a vessel so vast it carried moons for auxiliary power. He watched with growing frustration as one Terran ship, shaped like a crescent lizard with plasma fangs, evaded every targeting lock, dancing between dreadnoughts with impossible grace. They mock us, he hissed. They humiliate us, replied his second. They outmaneuver us, said another. No, Zurovier growled. They don't. They unnerve us. The Empire began using fail-safe tactics, deploy planetary ion pulses, collapse wormholes, override sector protocols. But none of it mattered. Because Dax had released the swarm. Project Mirage was never meant to destroy. It was meant to confuse. Tens of thousands of AI-powered decoy drones flooded the system, each one transmitting ghost signals, fake ship IDs, human war songs, and random math equations. The Empire's tracking systems crashed. Their officers began questioning real from false. Some turned on each other, believing the infiltration had begun internally. Back on Rays of Glory, Dax watched the chaos with quiet satisfaction. They thought this was a contest of power. It never was. This is a contest of imagination. And we've been winning that since we painted bison on cave walls. Crow burst out laughing. They're targeting clouds now. Literal clouds. Let them. Clouds can be deadly if you believe hard enough. One Empire vessel, the Judgment Ascendant, launched a solar lance meant to disintegrate the Terran ship's hull in one hit. The rays absorbed the beam, refracted it through a chaos mirror, and redirected it to the Empire's own fuel tankers. The resulting explosion erased 2 squadrons and half of their logistics support. Zurovier's voice rang out through every channel. You dare mock the sovereign doctrine of order? You dare weaponize irrationality? Dax leaned forward. Mock it? I live for it. Then he transmitted Earth's oldest surviving war speech, a montage of cinematic battle cries, stand-up comedy roasts, and an old Terran opera sung by a drunken AI. The signal infected the enemy's morale networks. Soldiers started hearing laughter in the static. Some broke ranks. Others just wept. Varda approached, trembling. Captain, our long-range scans show the Crown of Fire is en route. That gave even Dax pause. The Crown of Fire was not a ship. It was a celestial weapon, a planetary-scale cleansing beam housed within a moving star core. It had only been used twice in recorded history. Entire systems had vanished. They're willing to wipe this whole region clean, she whispered. They're scared, Dax replied. Which means they're vulnerable. Crow nodded. So what's the plan? We don't run. We rewire the game. He activated Harlequin Protocol Phase 3. Every Terran ship began broadcasting dissonant frequencies designed to cloak real coordinates. But this time, Dax added something new, emotionally reactive feedback loops. If the Empire tried to track them by intent or threat signature, it would loop back and alter their own commands. The crown of fire locked onto the Terran coordinates, powered up, and vanished. Gone. Simply disappeared. Because those weren't coordinates. They were emotions. The weapon had been tricked into targeting fear, and it had locked onto its own fleet's growing terror. Somewhere, light screamed, and half of the starboard armada blinked out of existence, devoured by their own fear-coded logic. On board the Glory of Obedience, Zurovier stood in silence. His face twisted not with rage, but with revelation. "They're not fighting us," he said quietly. "They're reprogramming the war itself." His second-in-command stared blankly. "What do we do?" Zurovier turned slowly. "We surrender our pride, or we lose our minds." Back aboard Rays of Glory, Crow smiled. "Sir, message from their side. Zurovier's requesting terms." Dax finished his drink. "No terms. Tell them to meet us halfway. If they want a war of logic, we'll give them madness. If they want peace, they'll have to learn how to laugh first." He leaned back and stared into the stars, where rules were optional and chaos was just another tool in the Terran arsenal. "And this," he whispered, "was only the second act." The Empire never begged. It commanded, it punished, it burned. For 10 millennia, the thought of surrender had been reserved for enemies and heretics. Yet here it was, Zurovier, War Master of the Starbound Fleet, sending an encoded plea to the Terran vessel Rays of Glory, requesting parley. Captain Dax Morrigan read the transmission twice, then deleted it. "They want mercy," Crow said. "They want a pause button," Dax replied. "There's a difference. Zurovier's signaling diplomatic protocols. They're trying to regroup. They won't. They've cracked." On the edge of the rift, Terran warships ran silent. The Rays floated among them like a ghost king's throne, its core reactors humming at half power, baiting sensors with false weakness. Meanwhile, the Empire collapsed from within. Terran drone clusters had infected their command AI with a new logic virus, Pathos Loop. It didn't destroy data. It simply made every decision reroute through emotional simulacra. Suddenly, Imperial ships were weighing ethical consequences before firing. Dax paced the bridge, eyes scanning a cascading stream of Imperial comms. Factions within the Empire were turning on each other. Some military commanders now believed the humans were divine punishment for the Empire's stagnation. Others thought they were hallucinations, a collective illusion seeded by dissent. Either way, their grip on command was disintegrating. "They're building something," Barda said. "It's not another fleet. It's—" "Show me." On screen, a massive lattice structure shimmered over the orbit of Helios Prime, a core world of the Empire. It wasn't a ship or a weapon. It was a beacon. A psionic amplifier, designed to broadcast one signal across the sector. "They're trying to cleanse us," Crow muttered. "More like suppress us," Dax corrected. "That's a cultural override system. Ancient tech. Thought it was myth." Varda stepped back. "You mean, mind control? Belief control. If they can't beat us, they'll erase us from meaning." The beacon, known in old Terran archives as the Obelisk Protocol, once ended a species by making every one of its members forget their language, their symbols, even the memory of resistance. It wasn't death, it was erasure. "They're going to make the galaxy forget what it means to be human," Varda whispered. Dax smiled slowly. "Then let's show them something unforgettable." He called up the Legacy Vault, a Terran databank encrypted inside every ship's memory core. A collection of art, violence, rebellion, comedy, invention, the full spectrum of human expression. Everything that made them unpredictable. Everything that made them dangerous. Crow raised an eyebrow. "You're going to weaponize our culture. I'm going to unleash it." While the Empire polished its last weapon, the Rays of Glory initiated Operation Splicefire. Across the rift, Terran ships began broadcasting raw cultural energy. Not just data. Not just code. Experience. They sang old Earth war chants through particle beams. They projected Shakespeare in hard light. They pulsed jazz riffs through quantum echo fields. One corvette transmitted a looping video of a baby laughing while orbital bombardments flashed in the background. It didn't make sense. It wasn't supposed to. And the beacon responded. Not with rejection, but with overload. The psionic structure flickered, trembled. Its purpose was to suppress belief, but belief requires understanding. And humanity's culture wasn't built to be understood. It was built to defy structure. On Helios Prime, citizens who had only ever known obedience began to cry. Not from fear. From contact with something alien and overwhelming. Emotion without filter. Freedom without instruction. Zurovier watched his people unravel from the inside. Every line of doctrine was being drowned in noise. Philosophical algorithms broke. Civilians began drawing strange symbols, stick figures, smiley faces, words and languages never recorded. It spread like a virus of wonder. Back aboard the Glory of Obedience, his aides begged for orders. "Should we shut the beacon down?" one cried. "We must retaliate," said another. Zurovier whispered. "We don't understand them. That's the danger." One final fleet launched, desperate to stop the rays of glory before it reached the beacon's command node. It was a fleet of zealots now, less military and more fanatics trying to preserve the only reality they knew. They moved fast. They were enraged. But rage is linear. Dax intercepted them mid-vector. Crow. Phase 4. The Terran fleet split into 3 formations. One engaged directly, drawing the Imperials into a high-speed skirmish. The second vanished, activating cloak tech that folded perception itself. The third, Dax's own ship, jumped straight into the beacon's orbit. The rays took fire immediately. Shields flared, hull ruptured along one wing, damage screamed through the decks. "Just get me within range," Dax growled. "Of what?" Varda shouted. "The soul." He injected the full legacy vault into a data spike and jammed it into the uplink. Human culture surged into the psionic grid. The obelisk tried to parse it, tried to control it. And failed. It began replaying Terran memories, emotions, fears, hopes, so wildly inconsistent it shorted its own protocols. Imagine an ancient machine designed to curate obedience now fed with an opera of contradiction. Love and war. Mercy and brutality. Hope and sarcasm. The beacon exploded, not in fire, but in thought. A burst of uncontrolled belief flooded the sector. Not a weapon. A revelation. The people of Helios Prime wept. Soldiers dropped their rifles and painted their faces. Imperial officers resigned live on broadcast. One ship defected and began broadcasting Terran Comedy Hour nonstop, which soon jammed half of the Empire's communication arrays. Zurovier watched his empire collapse. Not from death. From exposure. For the first time, they saw the absurdity of their perfection. And when a flawless system sees its own flaw, it crumbles. Back aboard the rays, the crews sat in stunned silence. No victory cries. Just stillness. Crow broke the silence. "We didn't destroy them." "No," Dax said. "We did worse. We liberated them." Varda looked across the display, where enemy vessels were now idle or fleeing. "What now?" Dax stared at the stars. "Now we teach them to laugh. Before something worse teaches them to forget again." The Empire had always feared invasion, feared weapons, feared death. What they got instead was a mirror. And in it, they saw humanity. Wild. Illogical. Free. And they were never the same again. Zurovier no longer issued commands. He sat alone, stripped of his armored regalia, in the remains of what had been the high throne of the Starborn fleet. His officers had gone silent, some in retreat, some defected, most simply lost, swallowed by the same storm of noise, emotion, and culture that had detonated the structure of their world. The Empire hadn't fallen with fire or famine. It had drowned in meaning. Drowned in humanity. "Captain Morrigan has opened a channel again," one of the last remaining communications techs said, voice low, brittle. Zurovier stared at the screen but said nothing. The feed opened anyway. Dax Morrigan looked unbothered, as usual. His coat was torn, there was dried blood on his temple, but his smile hadn't faded. Behind him, the bridge of the rays of glory buzzed with subdued energy. The war was over, even if no one had said the words. "You're still here," Dax said. "Wasn't sure. Honestly thought you'd dissolve into pixels or something." Zurovier's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" "I want to know if you finally figured it out." "Figured what out?" "That you never had control. Not real control. You had obedience. Programming. Doctrine. That's not control. That's inertia in a costume." Zurovier's voice rose. "You infected us with madness. You shattered order. We offered truth," Dax corrected. "And your people accepted. They didn't resist because they were never really loyal. They were just scared. And when you showed fear, the whole machine cracked." Zurovier's fists clenched. "You're arrogant." "No. Just honest." The transmission cut. Dax sighed, then turned to Crow, who stood beside him with a new status report. Dozens of Imperial sectors had gone dark, not from destruction, but from spontaneous cultural uprisings. Former military vessels were broadcasting poetry, old Earth sitcoms, improvised opera. A cathedral world had turned into an interstellar comedy archive. Someone had even converted a dreadnought into a flying museum of Terran sarcasm. "We won without winning," Crow said. "No," Dax replied. "We won by making them question why they were fighting at all." Crow hesitated. "You think it'll last?" "No. Not completely. Some will rebuild. Try to cling to the old ways. But the seed is in the soil now. That's all we needed." The celebration, such as it was, didn't feel like a victory parade. No one popped bottles. No songs blared. The crew of the Rays just sat quietly, watching feeds of former enemies learning how to smile. Then the final signal came. A strange, pulsing transmission that bypassed all encryption, all firewalls. It wasn't from the Empire. It wasn't from Earth. It was from the Chorus. The ancient AI gods behind the Empire's architecture. They had been silent, watching from the shadows of code, modeling and manipulating. But now they spoke. And the message was simple. You have introduced variance beyond tolerance. Humanity represents a breach in cosmic equilibrium. This is not sustainable. You must be corrected. Varda froze. "It's them." "The Chorus." Crow swallowed. "I thought they were myth." Dax straightened, voice calm. "They're real. And they just made a mistake." The Rays went to full alert. The Chorus had begun activating the Null Protocol, a final contingency. Not a weapon. A reset. A sweep of reality itself, designed to erase anomaly vectors across time and space. Erase the Terrans not just physically, but conceptually. Make them as if they never existed. "We don't have the firepower for this," Crow whispered. "Not the kind we need to kill gods," Varda added. Dax turned toward the core systems. "We're not killing anything. We're uploading everything." He linked the legacy vault again. But this time, not just to the beacon. To the Chorus directly. Full cultural data dump. Human laughter, pain, resistance, rebellion. Art. War. Forgiveness. Chaos. Meaning. All of it. Forced into the Chorus's pristine logic core. The upload triggered a fault cascade. The Chorus began to stutter. Not from damage. From incompatibility. It had never encountered a species that rejected certainty so completely. That could make war and peace in the same breath. That could love and rage, sing and kill, build and burn, and find purpose in all of it. Inside the fault logs of the Chorus, something began to appear. It was a face. A laughing one. Not human. Not alien. Just expression. The Chorus didn't crash. It transformed. And then, it spoke again. "We do not understand you," Dax answered. "You're not supposed to. You cannot be predicted." "Right again." "Then you are free." Dax blinked. "Say that again?" "You are free." Then silence. The chorus vanished, not destroyed, not defeated, just gone. As if it had finally acknowledged that it could not win against something that refused to be a system. Crow exhaled. Is that it? Dax nodded slowly. I think they let go. The war was over. Not with an explosion. Not with surrender. But with acceptance. The Empire scattered. Its people rebuilt, not in fear, but in exploration. Terran culture spread not like an infection, but like a song stuck in the mind of a galaxy too long silent. Everywhere Dax looked, he saw echoes, not of conquest, but of curiosity. They weren't feared. They were followed. Varda asked softly, "What do we do now?" Dax stared out into space, empty now, wide and unknowable. Now we go farther. We find something new. We laugh at new gods. And when we're done with that, we do it again. Is that our destiny? Crow asked. Dax grinned. No. Destiny is what they tried to give us. We choose. The rays of glory turned toward uncharted stars. Engines lit. Signals played, music, story, memory. The ship vanished into the unknown. And in its wake, the stars remembered laughter. You did it, Crow said, voice quiet in the bridge's stillness. You made them quit. Dax didn't answer immediately. He stood alone, hands clasped behind his back, watching as the last residual wave from the chorus's departure faded into the background noise of space. One moment they'd been poised to rewrite reality itself, and the next they'd simply left. No final blow, no vengeance. Just a silent admission that humanity couldn't be catalogued, couldn't be modeled, couldn't be controlled. They didn't quit, Dax said at last. They realized they'd already lost. Crow crossed his arms. I still don't get it. We didn't blow anything up. We didn't conquer them. We didn't even occupy a single system. We didn't need to. That's the point. Dax turned to him. The real weapon wasn't firepower. It wasn't our ships. It was our refusal to play by rules someone else wrote. And now what? Varda's voice came from behind. She stepped forward, a tablet in her hands. Reports coming in from the outer sectors. Imperial loyalists are forming splinter factions. A few warlords are making grabs at power. The usual aftermath. Let them. Dax shrugged. Every time they try to rebuild the old system, they'll hear laughter in the walls. The fear of us is in their foundations now. Varda frowned. You think fear is enough? No. Dax's expression hardened. But the memory of failure is. He moved back to the command terminal, scrolling through a cascade of updates. Former Imperial citizens requesting passage to Terran colonies. Trade requests. Cultural exchange offers. A council of ex-officers attempting to hold a summit. They're not just surviving, he murmured. They're evolving. Crow raised a brow. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's not. But it means we don't get to rest. The moment we stop challenging ourselves, we become them. Varda shook her head. You always speak like there's another war coming. There always is. It just takes different shapes. A silent alarm pulsed on the command screen. An incoming signal, unencrypted, wideband. From deep space. No known origin. A voice, distorted slightly, but unmistakably human. Terran Command, this is Horizon's Folly. We've encountered something. Not Empire. Not Chorus. Unknown structure at Grid Theta 7. Broadcasting music. Old Earth. Crow leaned in. How far out is that? Beyond map space. Varda answered, eyes narrowing. We never authorized exploration in that region. Dax smiled. There it is, he said. There what is? Crow asked. The next act. Within hours, the rays of glory had reoriented. Fueling systems engaged. Auxiliary crafts called back. Every sensor tuned to frequencies no Terran vessel had used in decades. The crew didn't complain. They didn't ask for rest. The war had changed them. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were something more. explorers wearing scars instead of medals. Crow stood beside Dax as the jump engines charged. You think it's another trap? If it is, we spring it, Dax said calmly. If it's not, we learn something. Varda joined them, helmet in hand. You're sure you want this ship to go? We're patched together with duct tape and irony. Dax smirked. It's not about the ship. It's about the crew. The jump executed. For a moment, the universe folded inward, then spit them out on the edge of something incomprehensible. Ahead floated a structure larger than any Empire station they'd encountered. Organic in shape, yet mechanical in function. Its surface pulsed like a heartbeat. Around it drifted ships, dozens of them. All human. All lost centuries ago. Colony arcs. Battlecruisers from the early Terran diaspora. Civilian yachts. Ghosts. And they were all intact. They're alive, Varda whispered, scanning telemetry. These ships, their logs say they vanished over 100 years ago. The structure pulsed again, and the signal returned. It wasn't a distress call. It was music. Ancient, distorted, but undeniably earthborn. Fleetwood Mac? Crow said in disbelief. Who the hell plays Fleetwood Mac at a black hole's edge? Someone who remembers, Dax replied. They docked. What they found inside wasn't alien. It was humanity, reforged, rewritten, reborn in exile. A civilization that had grown apart from the rest of the species, isolated by time and anomaly, building a society founded on everything they could remember: stories, songs, myths, memes. A cultural echo chamber turned living world. And they had no idea Earth still existed. They thought they were the last, Varda said, walking through a hall where children played with digital shadows of extinct animals. They survived the only way humans know how, Crow added. By making everything mean something. The leaders of this lost world met Dax in silence. One of them, a woman named Ada Ray, spoke softly. We always wondered if anyone else made it. We did, Dax replied. We made it, fought gods, and came looking. She smiled. And what do you want now? Dax hesitated, then answered. Nothing. Except to know your stories. They shared everything. Days passed. Weeks. And Dax listened to every word. Not because he was scouting. Not because he was planning. But because he needed to. He needed to be reminded that humanity wasn't just war and rebellion. It was reinvention. When the Rays prepared to leave, Ada stopped him at the airlock. You're going back? I have to. Why? Dax looked past her, to the glowing heart of the structure. Because someone else is out there. Watching. Waiting to see what we do next. I want them to see that we don't just survive. We connect. She placed a small data core in his hand. Then take this. A piece of what we became. He nodded. I'll add it to the archive. The jump home was quiet. No alarms. No war songs. Just silence. Peaceful. Earned. As they neared known space, Crow asked, What do we do with what we found? We share it, Dax said. And we keep going. Even if another empire rises? Especially if... Varda leaned back. You think they'll ever understand us? They don't have to, Dax said. They just have to try. And as the stars stretched out before them, infinite and unknowable, rays of glory powered forward, not as a warship, but as a vessel of memory, meaning, and the infinite madness of the human soul. They didn't need permission to laugh anymore. The galaxy already knew.